the story that sounds like a screenplay, but it's all real. Meet Dave Letterfly Knoderer, a man who literally ran away with the circus and found his way through wild rides, artistic triumphs, addiction, and ultimately deep healing. From painting elephants to motorcycles, from hitting rock bottom to connecting with the divine. Dave's life proves that healing isn't linear and creativity can be a compass to inner peace and better health. So, Dave, running away to join the circus isn't something people just say, you actually did it. So, what drove you to take that leap?
Well, the reason for joining the circus has to do with having grown up in a frustrating family situation. And I perceived the family to be the problem. And so I figured out the solution would be for me to join the circus. Now, the circus is something that I was imprinted with as a toddler when I was a little kid because my dad loved the circus. So, on some level, I suppose there was some effort to make an impression upon my father by doing that, even though when as a teenager, he was dead set against me wanting to make such a bold move.
Hmm? So, looking back, do you see that act as a rebellion or salvation?
The uh, what I do when I'm looking back, I can't take all the credit for the way that my life turned out. It certainly has been an interesting path that has occurred over the last over 50 years. And even though my ambition was to run away and join the circus, it would not have happened without some serendipity taking place, putting some of the perfect things right in my path, if you'll if you please.
Hmm? Sometimes the path to healing begins by running toward wonder, even if it looks chaotic at first, right?
That's exactly right. Uh,
Hmm.
the path to healing has begins with, in my case, it began with suffering so much that it took me to a bottom, and it became obvious that to continue to do so was going to just be the undoing of myself. And very fortunately, again, I've got to give some other divine power all of the credit. I was led into the path of healing. They call it recovery. And the things that I discovered during the path of healing were the principles that bring about a complete change in your life. And those principles are forgiveness and acceptance and being kind and loving and just simply stop complaining and making things wrong. And judgment is a big player in there, and that's one that we've been warned about in all of the spiritual analogies. We are encouraged to do not judge, because it's what happens is it promotes separation when we become uh, so ego centered that we know what's best for not only ourselves but for everybody around us. We become separated. And it's only through letting go of those tendencies that we become connected. It takes through the device called humility, we end up becoming one with our Heavenly Father instead of separated uh, by the all-knowing ego.
Hmm. So your artistic journey has evolved through so many forms, right from circus banners to French guitars. So how has creativity helped you process your emotional landscape?
My tendency for creativity is partially due to the same challenge that I had growing up, as a child in a frustrating family situation. You see, all of the kids in the neighborhood were picking on my older brother who was producing clumsy, bizarre behavior. So as a child, I chose to not become connected to society. I withdrew and became creative instead. So part of what makes me great is that particular uh, turning away from normal childhood activities, which is to learn how to communicate, learn how to read the facial signals on the other children, and read body language and become socially skillful. Well, in my case, I became creative and artistic and productive, but not necessarily socially skillful.
That's noteworthy. So, was there a particular project that felt deeply cathartic or transformative for you?
The thing that began my transformation from being withdrawn and creative into someone who is socially functional involved the segue of training horses. As the on the circus, I gravitated right to the people who were training animals, and I ended up becoming attracted to the way that they were being kind to their animals, and they were coaxing them and enrolling them to perform all kinds of interesting gestures. And it just became a source of fascination for me. And I suppose it's because I had not developed in that arena on the playground as a child. But I did learn, and ended up becoming a skillful horse trainer. Ended up becoming a passion. It's still something I'm passionate about. And as the result of learning social skills in regards to becoming able to enroll a horse to do something, it provided me with the an entrance way, I suppose, into becoming interested and functional as a human being with the rest of society.
It's actually fascinating, Dave, that how art becomes more than expression, it becomes.
Art as medicine. That's a beautiful way to look at that, because an awful lot of what we do when we especially during the path of healing, there are images that we can become involved in that actually promote healing. There's an exercise where the where the patient is encouraged to flip through magazines, and then when an image speaks to you, you tear that image out of the magazine and use that as part of making a personal collage, whether it's a healing collage or a vision board or any number of things. So images are very, very a powerful device for promoting healing. And another form is writing. It starts with journaling. When you've got something going on in your brain that's going around and around in circles so much that you can't fall asleep at night, it's time to get up and grab your notebook and start journaling about what it is that's swirling around in your head. And that journaling, that writing, that putting into words the elusive, amorphous thing that's taking place in in your brain, helps to solidify it and make it so that it is tangible. And then once you have a tangible concept that you're aware of, that's separating you from the peace that God wants for you to, then you can apply the correct principles. You can apply forgiveness and letting go and and all of those other kinds of things in order to bring about peace and joy, and especially useful purpose. When we take these exact same stories and share them with another person who may be suffering, they get encouragement that, oh, wow, I don't have to stay this way. Healing is available.
I completely agree with that. Now, you speak openly about your battle with alcoholism. So, what was the moment you knew that something had to change?
Well, I got a credit of the horses for that because on some level, I knew that my drinking was interfering with my passion of becoming an excellent horse uh, horse riding person, and I had a big opportunity in Dallas, Texas, to perform as the headliner on my big saddlebred mare at a horse show, the Big D Saddle Horse Show, big event, and I was the headliner. And I just knew on some level that I would do a better job if I quit drinking. So I did an experiment and I stopped drinking 3 weeks before the event. And I practiced and practiced and practiced. And then I went to the event. I did a bang up job. Every time I went in, I did a beautiful performance. And then the thing that was interesting was as soon as the event was over, my drinking went right back to where it was before. And so that was probably the beginning of my wake up call. In regards to my alcoholism, uh, I did not get stopped and get a DUI. I was never hospitalized. I was never put in jail. I was never any of those things that wreck cars and stuff. I was never any of those things that are typically associated with alcoholism. I was a functioning alcoholic. All I ever wanted to do was get to a certain level and then just stay there. And uh, but that little experiment that I did, it it planted a seed, and I began to desire a life without alcohol. And when I discovered that I couldn't stop on my own, that's when I ended up reaching out for help, and I reached out to Alcoholics Anonymous and became, and I still am, a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now I've got 36 years clean, and I keep going so that I can be a blessing to the other people who are brand new at it.
Mm-hmm. It's like healing often begins when we stop numbing the pain and start meeting.
That's right. When as we become more and more spiritually aware, we recognize that it is the pain that brings about the greatest amount of growth. So instead of trying to escape the pain, especially through any addictive activity, drinking and certainly shopping, and there's sexaholism, and there's lots of different ways to escape the pain. But instead, when we grow spiritually, we realize, wait a minute, there's another lesson for me. And we become better able to move into the pain and uh, uncover what it is that's providing the pain. And then once we are fully aware of what it is that's bringing about the pain, we can apply the spiritual principles that will bring about not only healing, but especially peace and useful purpose.
That completely makes sense, Dave. Now, your story with your father comes full circle in a beautiful way. So, how did forgiveness factor into your health and peace?
Oh, I'm very, very fortunate that uh, uh, my relationship with my father went from him being completely frustrated with my decision to select what it was that selected to do. But once I entered into sobriety, I had the ability to enter into healing for that relationship with my father. And in sobriety, we became the best of friends. And he even spent a summer. He ended up going, "Wow, this kid of mine is having the time of his life. I think I'll go with him and enjoy being in show business for one summer." So we had a father son healing togetherness experience out there on the road with show business.
Ah, that's admirable, Dave. Sometimes peace isn't just about letting go, it's about seeing with new eyes, right?
You are exactly right. And sometimes it's all about taking off the glasses that are giving us uh, the perception of what it is that we see around us, instead of seeing through glasses that are clouded with murk or something. We can take off the glasses, or at least clean them, and then we can see that the world around us is a wonderful place filled with joy and hope, and certainly many, many opportunities for us to find ways to be a blessing to those around us.
Absolutely. So, what advice would you like to give to someone who's lost in chaos, trying to find purpose or inner calm?
Well, the concept to embrace has to do with what it is that we do on an in a natural way, because we're human beings. Because see, when we were born, we were at one with God. And then our parents started teaching us that we were separate. We started learning that these are my fingers, this is my nose, this is my my knees, my toes, and we started accumulating the concept that we were separate. And then that concept got fortified by what we call the ego. And it is a necessary part of the human experience, is to experience the separation. But when we learn to grow spiritually, we end up realizing, hey, wait a minute, there's an awful lot of this separation concept that is not good for me. And it's interfering with my ability to enter into and maintain a close relationship with God. So we have to learn how to detach from what the ego continues to want to tell us ongoingly, and embrace our oneness. And the way that we do that is by becoming still and allowing the mind to quiet down, so the ego is no longer that uh, committee going on in our brain telling us all this stuff. We become quiet and allow the mind to become completely quiet. And then, in the moment that we are in that peace, we find the ability to enter into an intimate relationship with God.
Hmm. So, do you believe that creativity is a
Creativity, definitely. And you can take that same concept that I just introduced you to in regards to becoming at one with God, in in regards to entering into the flow of inspiration. Because see, ideas, the ego wants to tell you that that your brain is creating all of these ideas. But then when we become at one with God, we end up entering into something that's even greater than our own finite ability to come up with ideas. And that is, we are in the flow of inspiration. When we become open to outside influences, all of a sudden we can be looking at a tree and see a little bird land on a branch, and something else will happen, and then all of a sudden an idea will occur, and we'll act on that, and then afterwards I'll go, well, where did that come from? Well, it's because I was in the flow of inspiration. And see, as we become better and better at being at one with God, we enter into not only the flow of inspiration, but especially the flow of health and abundance and joy and happiness, and especially useful purpose. Uh, Finding ways to be a blessing to those around us. And when we keep the focus of our attention on something outside of us, we are denying the ego the ability to continue to influence us with all of those separation concepts that it wants to fortify.
Mm-hmm. It's like the blank canvas doesn't judge, it just waits, and sometimes so must we, right?
Yeah, definitely. If we ask
Mm.
God to show us, and then we take the brush and we dip it in the paint, and then we take it up there and tap it on the canvas, we have begun. And then when we allow God to work in our lives, the next thing that happens is we co-create something that's absolutely beautiful.
So, what's something chaotic in your life right now that you are learning
Chaos.
to impress?
Yeah, you
Mhm.
want to know something chaotic going on in my life right now? Oh, there's always plenty of that. I have an ambition, and I have a project that's underway. And the other day, I started taping up the vehicle, and there I had a colleague that was watching me, and he goes, "Hey, that looks pretty crooked." And I'd look at it, and then I'd look at it again, and then I'd untape it, and then I'd tape it and make it look even straighter, and blah blah blah. I got all done. It was off by a good maybe a quarter of an inch, and so I ended up. There's a lesson in that. One of them is that I've got to learn how to trust myself and and trust God, and allow these other people to have their opinions in regards to what it is they're seeing, because not everybody sees the same way. And the end result was I had to redo it, and then I taped it up again yesterday to get it straight. I had to get it right. So uh, and that's part of the deal. This experience that we're having, this human experience that we're having, is filled with making mistakes. We just because we're uh, ambitious and we've got all these ideas about what we want to do does not insulate us from making mistakes. But what we end up finding out is that making mistakes or missing the mark is the more often you do it, that just means you're involved with doing a lot of stuff. So there's no reason to avoid doing things in an effort to avoid making mistakes, because making mistakes is part of the experience. And when we learn from our mistakes, we end up becoming a lot more wise than if we would have remained frozen and selected to not take a step forward.
Mm-hmm. I love that, Leif, that how you're finding beauty even in the mess. There's something deeply human and hopeful in that.
Definitely. There's beauty all around us. And when my spiritual attitude is admirable, I'm usually whistling while I work.
Absolutely. What a ride with the wise and widely authentic with you, Dave Letterfly Knoderer. Your life reminds us no matter how far off track we feel, our story isn't over. Art can be our prayer, our peace, and portal back to ourselves. Follow Dave at Letterfly Art and let your creativity lead the way to healing. Until next time, stay open, stay inspired, and remember your life is your masterpiece.